The rain fell in thick sheets over Brooklyn that November evening, transforming the streets into rivers of reflected neon. Inside Bellini's, the old Italian restaurant on Mulberry Street, the warm glow of pendant lights created a sanctuary from the storm. The smell of garlic and fresh basil filled the air, mingling with the low hum of conversation from the scattered patrons. Elena Russo had worked at Bellini's for 3 years, ever since she dropped out of college to help pay her mother's medical bills. At 24, she had learned to read people quickly: the tourists who would leave lousy tips, the regulars who wanted their usual without asking, and the dangerous men who expected to be treated like kings. Tonight, one of those dangerous men walked through the door. She recognized him immediately, not from any personal encounter, but from whispered warnings among the staff. Dominic Santoro, the head of the Santoro crime family, a man whose name alone could silence a room. Everyone in Brooklyn knew that name, and everyone knew to stay out of his way. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, bodyguards with eyes that never stopped scanning the restaurant, hands ready to reach for weapons at the slightest provocation. But it was Dominic who commanded attention. He stood over 6 feet tall, with salt and pepper hair slicked back from a face that might have been handsome if not for the coldness in his dark eyes. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena made in a year, and he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had never been told no. "Elena," her manager Marco hissed from behind the bar, "table 7. And for God's sake, don't mess this up." She grabbed her notepad with trembling fingers and approached the corner booth where Dominic had settled, his bodyguards taking positions at a nearby table. "Good evening," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Welcome to Bellini's. Can I start you with something to drink?" Dominic looked up at her, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps, or curiosity. Then it was gone. Whiskey, Macallan, neat, and a bottle of the '97 Barolo for the table. "Of course, sir." Elena hurried to the bar, her hands shaking as she poured his whiskey. When she returned to the table, Dominic was reviewing something on his phone. She set down the whiskey glass, and as she reached across to pour the wine, she noticed his sleeve had ridden up, revealing part of a tattoo on his inner forearm. The blood drained from her face. It was a distinctive design, a black rose intertwined with a thorned vine, with 3 small stars arranged in a triangle above it. She had seen that exact tattoo 1,000 times before. On her mother's arm, her hand jerked and wine splashed onto the white tablecloth. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." "Stop." The single word froze her in place. Dominic's eyes were locked onto her face, reading every micro-expression. "What did you see?" "Nothing, sir. My hand slipped. Don't lie to me." His voice was quiet, almost soft, but it carried the weight of a threat. "I saw your face when you looked at my arm."
"What did you see?"
Elena's mind raced. She could lie, play dumb, pray he would let it go. But something told her that lying to Dominic Santoro would be far more dangerous than telling the truth. "Your tattoo," she whispered. "My mom has the same one." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the 2 of them suspended in a moment that could end very badly for her. Dominic's jaw tightened. His hand moved to his forearm, covering the tattoo as if protecting it. "That's not possible," he said finally. "This design is one of a kind. I've seen it my whole life," Elena insisted. "On my mother's left forearm, a black rose with thorns and 3 stars. She never told me what it meant." Dominic stared at her for a long moment. Then he leaned back in the booth. "What's your mother's name?" "Sophia Russo." Something happened to his face then. A transformation so subtle and yet so profound that Elena felt she was seeing an entirely different man. The cold mask cracked, and beneath it was something raw, pain, shock. "Sophia," he breathed. "Sophia Marchetti." Elena shook her head. "No, her maiden name was Conti. That's what she would have told you. But I knew her as Sophia Marchetti, before she disappeared, before she took everything from me and vanished." The restaurant spun around Elena. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "How old are you?" Dominic asked. 24. "When is your birthday?" "March 15th.
Dominic closed his eyes.
When he opened them again, they were wet.
25 years ago,
he said slowly, "I fell in love with a woman named Sophia Marchetti. We were going to be married. She was pregnant with my child. And then one night she disappeared." Elena felt the floor dropping away beneath her. "No," she whispered. "My father died before I was born. A lie. A story she told you to protect you. Dominic's voice cracked. I've spent 25 years searching for my child, and now she's standing in front of me, serving me wine. Elena stumbled backward. This is insane. You're lying. The tattoo, Dominic said. I designed it myself. The black rose for Sophia, the thorns for the pain our love would bring, being from rival families, and the 3 stars, one for me, one for her, and one for the baby. I tattooed it on her arm myself. In my apartment, while Tony Bennett played on the radio. Tears streamed down Elena's face. Every word he spoke resonated with truths she had felt her whole life. The gaps in her mother's story, the sadness behind Sophia's eyes. Why would she leave? Elena managed, because of who I was becoming. My father was grooming me to take over the family. Sophia saw what that life would mean. The violence, the danger. She didn't want that for our child. Dominic pulled a card from his jacket pocket. This is my private number. When you're ready to talk, or when Sophia is ready to see me, call. I'll accept whatever you decide. But please, don't disappear again. Elena nodded, unable to speak, and walked out into the rain. Sophia Russo was awake when Elena let herself into the apartment in Red Hook. At 53, she looked older than her years. The illness had carved hollows in her cheeks, but her eyes were still sharp, and they immediately clocked the devastation on Elena's face. What happened? Sophia demanded. Dominic Santoro came into the restaurant tonight. Sophia went white, her hand flew to her chest. No, he saw me, Mom. He said he's my father. Sophia began to tremble. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I tried to protect you, she whispered. That's all I ever wanted. Is it true? The question fell like a hammer. Sophia closed her eyes, and 25 years of secrets came crashing down. Yes. Elena sank to her knees beside her mother's chair. Why didn't you tell me? What would you have known? That your father was a killer, that he rose to power through violence. Would that have made your life better? It's still my life, my story. I had every right to protect you. Sophia grabbed Elena's hands. I was born into that world. My father was Enzo Marchetti, one of the most powerful men in New York. When I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to give you a chance at a normal life. But you loved him. It wasn't a question. Even now the love was still there in Sophia's face. I loved him more than I knew was possible, Sophia admitted. But I watched him change, watched his father's poison seep into him. I knew if I stayed, I would lose you. So you ran. I ran, changed my name, built a new life. Every day for 25 years I've lived with that weight, knowing I took his child from him, knowing I robbed you of a father. Sophia's voice dropped. I'm not asking forgiveness. I'm only asking you to understand I did it out of love. Elena sat back, her mind reeling. She thought of her childhood, the constant moves, the fake names, her mother's paranoia. It all made sense now. He wants to see you, Elena said. He wants to help pay for your treatment. No, I won't take his money. Maybe it's not your choice anymore. Elena stood. I'm not a child. I have a right to make my own decisions. I want to know him. Elena, please. You've had 25 years of making choices for both of us. Now it's my turn. She softened. I won't force you to see him, but I won't let you stop me either. Sophia was quiet, then nodded slowly. You're so much like him. That stubbornness. She took a shaky breath. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't let that world take you. I promise. But even as she said the words, Elena felt something when she thought of Dominic Santoro. Recognition. Connection. She felt like she was finally seeing a piece of herself that had been missing her whole life. 3 days later, Elena called the number on the card. They met at a cafe in Manhattan, neutral ground, public enough to feel safe. Dominic arrived alone, without his bodyguards, wearing a simple black coat that made him look almost like an ordinary man. Almost. They talked for hours. He told her about his childhood, about his mother who died when he was young, and left a void that nothing could fill, about meeting Sophia at a party when they were both 19, and feeling like his heart had stopped. He told her about the plans they'd made for a future that never came, a house by the water, children running through the yard, a life far away from the violence of their families. Elena told him about her life, the quiet suburbs where she'd grown up under an assumed name, the schools where she never stayed long enough to make real friends, the dreams of becoming a doctor before finances forced her to drop out. She told him about her mother's illness, the experimental treatment that might save her life, but cost more than they could ever afford. By the end of that first meeting, Dominic had arranged to pay for Sophia's treatment, anonymously, through a foundation that couldn't be traced back to him. Elena accepted, knowing her mother would be furious, but also knowing it might save her life. Over the following weeks, they met again and again. Each conversation revealed the man beneath the monster. Elena learned that Dominic had spent years searching for them, that he had never married again, never had other children. She learned that beneath the violence, there was a capacity for love that had never died. And slowly, reluctantly, Elena began to feel something unexpected. She began to feel like she had a father. The turning point came 2 months later, when Sophia's condition suddenly worsened. Elena came home to find her mother collapsed on the kitchen floor. The ambulance ride was a blur, and then Elena was alone in a hospital waiting room, facing the possibility of losing the only parent she had ever known. She called Dominic without thinking. He arrived within 20 minutes, his face tight with worry. He didn't speak, just sat beside her, and took her hand through the long hours, while doctors fought to stabilize Sophia. When they finally let Elena into the room, her mother was awake, weak, but awake, and when she saw Dominic standing in the doorway behind her daughter, she didn't scream or order him to leave. She just looked at him and said, "You always did have terrible timing, Dominic." He laughed a broken, relieved sound, and crossed the room to her bedside. "You haven't changed, Sophia, neither have you, still too handsome for your own good." They looked at each other across 25 years of separation, and something passed between them, understanding, acceptance, or maybe just the acknowledgement that some things couldn't be undone, only forgiven. "I'm sorry," Sophia whispered, "for what I took from you." "I know." Dominic reached down and gently took her hand, the hand with the tattoo, the black rose that matched his own. "And I'm sorry for what I became, for making you feel like running was your only choice." They didn't solve everything that night. There was too much history, too much pain, but they started the conversation that should have happened 25 years ago. And in that beginning, there was hope. Sophia recovered, slowly, painfully, but she recovered. The treatment worked better than anyone expected, pushing the cancer into remission, and giving her back the color in her cheeks, the strength in her step. She would never be fully healthy again, but she had been given a gift: more time with her daughter, more chances to make things right. Elena kept working at Bellini's, but now she was also taking night classes, working toward the medical degree she'd always wanted. The hours were brutal, waiting tables until midnight, then studying until her eyes burned, but she had never felt more alive. Dominic had offered to pay for her education outright, but she refused. She would make her own way, earn her own success. He respected that, even if he worried about her pushing herself so hard. They became a family, unconventional, fractured, held together by tattooed roses, and shared blood, and the stubborn refusal to lose each other again. Dominic was never going to be a good man, not by any normal definition. The things he had done, the things he continued to do, they would always stand between him and redemption. But he was trying to be a good father, and sometimes Elena thought that was enough. On her 25th birthday, Dominic gave her a gift, a small velvet box containing a ring that had belonged to his mother, a simple band of white gold with a tiny diamond. "It's not much," he said awkwardly, "but it was all I had left of her. I want you to have it." Elena slipped the ring onto her finger, and felt its weight, the weight of family, of history, of love that survived even the darkest circumstances. "Thank you," she said, "Dad." It was the first time she'd called him that. Dominic's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment the Mafia boss vanished, leaving only a father overwhelmed with gratitude for a second chance. "Happy birthday, Elena," he whispered. "My daughter." Outside the window, Brooklyn glittered under the evening lights. Somewhere in the city, danger lurked and the world continued its harsh spin. But inside, there was only family, only love, only the improbable miracle of a waitress, a tattoo, and the words that changed everything. "My mom has the same one."